Hey Daily Dosers, we are in the middle of our series on the Hall of Faith, and today we get to take a look at Rahab. Rahab the prostitute is what it says. So let's read what it says here in chapter 11 of the book of Hebrews, how Rahab is noted as one of the members of the Hall of Faith. It says this in verse 31, "By faith Rahab the prostitute did not perish with those who were disobedient, because she had given a friendly welcome to the spies." So not a lot of meaty context there in Hebrews 11, but she is noted. So to really put context and meat to why Rahab is listed among these, there's so many backstories and so many interconnected pieces with this mention of Rahab. So I think we got to go all the way back to Jericho in the book of Joshua when the Israelites were surrounding the city and they marched for 7 days. They blew the trumpets and the walls of Jericho fell down. Probably the most notable milestone moment, miracle, God's working through the Israelite people in that time. That's the story where we see Rahab. So what happened is the city of Jericho, fortified and walled, as God's people are there, they're going to go surround the city and by obedience, do what God said and march around the city 7 times. Before that, Joshua had sent spies into the city to go scope it out. Now, these guys weren't trained military operatives. They're just Israelite guys. They've probably never been on spying missions before, and they weren't too good at it because the day that they went in, someone was like, hey, there's some spies here. So in the story, they go and they end up somehow, which really we don't know all the details, they end up interacting with Rahab, the prostitute. And she was a woman of bad reputation in that area. And so somebody had found out that these spies were here and that she was hiding them. But what we do know through the story and through Rahab's own testimony is that the story of the people of Israel and their God has become known to even Rahab. Rahab had heard of the God of the Israelites. She had heard about the stories of them coming out of Egypt. The renown of the God of Israel had been passed around in those days by word of mouth, by story, by testimony, to the point that this one lady, Rahab, a prostitute who lived on a house on the edge of the wall of the city where even a window faced outside the wall. So her house, basically the back of her house, was the wall of the city. And so she had known enough that when these Israelite men came, she basically pleaded with them to say, I know what you're coming to do, and I simply ask this, will you spare me and my family? She had enough faith to know that the God who had delivered them before, the God who had conquered their enemies before, was going to probably do the same to this people in Jericho. And her faith in the testimony of God moved her to believe that what God had done before, he would do again. And that she had asked for salvation from the wrath of God, basically in this interaction. And so in doing so, Rahab had demonstrated her faith in who God was. Rahab had said, I believe, I know of God, I've heard who he is, and I believe he is who he says he is. I believe what I know about him, and I am confessing my belief and asking for salvation, which in a sense is so connected to everything that the New Testament, what Christ came to preach. Her example of what she did is exactly what every person who encounters the truth of God, especially through Christ, who says, you believe who he is and confess that you believe it and ask for salvation because you know without him you will be destroyed. And that's exactly what happened. Jericho was utterly destroyed, except Rahab, through her faith, by helping the spies and asking for their salvation, she was saved. Her and her family, all of them, even though the rest of the city was completely destroyed. And so her faith not only saved her, it also gave her a place in the Hall of Fame. But what I love about it as the story goes on is that Rahab is now in the New Testament listed in the lineage of the Messiah. She not only has a place here in Hebrews, but also as those who are in the chronology, in the prophetic chronology of that the Messiah will be born in this lineage, Rahab is included. That she is one of the ancestors directly of Christ himself. And so she has this unique place in Scripture. But yet even in Hebrews here, it says Rahab the prostitute. That moniker never left her. And so she could have lived in that to go, but I'm just a prostitute. Why me? And that doesn't matter. She's recorded here. It could have just said Rahab, but it didn't. And so what it brings me to say today is this. The thing that I even maybe wrestle with is God can save anyone. He wants to save everyone, even a prostitute. And her life was completely changed. Not only her physical life was saved that day, the life of her and her family, but she has a place in history now, in an honored place because of the faith that she placed in the God that she had heard of. The same situation for all of us. And that twofold. One, we can't look at people and say, oh, they're just a prostitute. That's one truth that we can take from it. And the other one is we put it on ourselves. We can't look down on ourselves and go, I'm just a fill in the blank. It doesn't matter who you are. God can and will use you if you put your faith in him. That's the story that we get from Rahab, the prostitute.